Hello, everyone. Welcome to Texas Folk Life's Folk and Traditional Arts Virtual Roundtable. This is the first discussion that we're having as part of this new project to stay connected during this challenging time for the world and for our communities here locally as well. What we're going to talk about today revolves around how we define our work. So the title of this discussion is Redefining Our Work, Folk and Traditional Arts During a Pandemic. And I have some great guests with us today. I will introduce them and we'll go around and have a brief discussion, have each participant introduce themselves and talk about some of the issues we're all facing right now in the field of folk and traditional arts. And we are experimenting, trying to figure this out together. So this is the first of hopefully many discussions, and we'll keep getting better. So I'd like to introduce our panel here. We have Christina Bailly. She is the Executive Director of the Guadalupe Cultural Arts Center in San Antonio, Texas. Christina has over 20 years of experience in nonprofit community-based work and over a decade in Latino arts programming and administration in Texas, and is the former Executive Director of Texas Folk Life. We have Ariana Bina, who is a musician and educator. She's a former Texas Folk Life Apprenticeship program participant in accordion techniques with Shirley Johnson. And Ariana and Shirley are both based in Austin. So welcome, Ariana.
Thank you.
We've got also Thomas Richardson, who is an independent folklorist and a traditional arts consultant. He's based in Santa Fe, New Mexico. He has a PhD in folklore and ethnomusicology from Indiana University. And he's worked with several different state folk arts agencies and local folk arts groups and done many projects around the country. And so we're lucky to have him and the rest of this panel here with us today. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Charlie.
What I'll do here is just kind of go around and ask everyone to give a few minutes by way of introduction. I'd like for you to tell us what your profession is, or what is the kind of work that you do, and what connection do you have to folk and traditional arts. And given the situation we find ourselves in here, working remotely, not being able to do the things we normally do, what does your work look like right now in the wake of the situation? So that's kind of a prompt to give an intro. So let's start with Ariana, if we can, if you want to go ahead.
Mm-hmm. So the majority of my work is in education. And so I work privately with like 20 to 30 students on a weekly basis. And I do that through a studio. So I've pretty much lost all of my students since this pandemic because the studio shut down. So for me, what my work kind of looks like now is Skype lessons, if I can, if the students can, Skype lessons. And it's kind of presented a cool opportunity for me because I'm creating more online content and then like sharing it through social media and just trying to kind of expose people to different folk styles of music. So I played recently, I was just taking requests from people, and I got requests for Western swing. I got requests for Iranian music. And so I've really just been trying to do more outreach and, you know, seeing what people want to hear and maybe introducing them to things that they haven't. So, yeah.
Okay, great. Let's continue with introductions here from Thomas. Do you want to say hello and tell us a little bit about your work?
Yeah, sure. So as you said, I am independent. I'm an independent contractor. And I have worked with a number of different organizations. When this all kind of started happening, this COVID-19 moment that we're in, I had several contracts for field work, for ethnographic field work in different locations that I hadn't started yet. I hadn't done the field work yet. So in fact, I'm supposed to be in the Ozarks right now, according to plan. field work is a particular, I mean, everyone is affected, right? But I feel like a lot of places haven't been thinking, right, probably rightly so, about how to do field work remotely. And right now, since all of that was either postponed, luckily for me, nothing was canceled. This is the great benefit of working with cultural workers and advocates and folklorists and, you know, people sympathetic and adjacent, is that they're very human about it. And no one said, hey, we're going to cancel your contract. They said, let's figure out what to do in light of all this. And so what we're talking about right here, right now, is my whole world right now is trying to figure out how to do something that has been previously based on human interaction, and there is not a model for to do remotely. I am, of course, not alone in that. A lot of people are doing that. I have a huge amount of concern about leaping before you look. There are already people who are doing things that give me pause, that I think are a little ambitious and under considered. Some things that are potentially traumatic or exploitative. So I'm trying to both do my work in a thoughtful way and advocate for others to, you know, consider all the ramifications of what this moment is, and what it is to try to our place in it, you know, our role as documentarians.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. We can hear you fine. Your video is frozen on my end. I don't know if that's the case for everyone else. Again, we're figuring this out together, so you might want to look at your video settings there.
Yeah, I'll take a look at that.
But I can hear you just fine. So thank you for that intro. Let's move to our next participant here, Christina Bailly, if you want to say hello and introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. Hello. And thank you, Charlie, for bringing us together. I think this is a great idea because you know, and all of us on this panel know, and everybody knows that we're all just trying to figure this out as we go. While we're still in a little bit of shell shock, you know, we don't know what's hitting us. There's so many unknowns. We don't know, you know, so there's of course the financial ramifications of all of this. And then there will be social ramifications and creative and all kinds of changes that are going to happen, and we're all trying to balance it all at the same time as we're figuring it out. Also, right now, I feel like we're not even in the middle of it. We're still at the beginning of it, and I don't know how the rest of you have felt, but you know, I feel like we're still going through the domino effect. What we have had to do at our cultural center in San Antonio, Texas, is consider different programs one by one. You know, if you're running an arts organizations, you have several programs going on at the same time, and the planning is going on year round. And then here comes the most immediate program, and what do you do with that one? I joke with my staff that the worst I used to have to deal with was rain, you know, coming up with an event and whether we were going to cancel the event due to rain. Well, you know, now it's like the world has changed completely. And so we're having to do this with program after program after program. And you go through a little bit, you go through this moment of stress with each one when you're having to make a decision. So it's an entirely new landscape. You know, we're all navigating it. The directors of the organizations have to keep a very close eye, you know, on the budgets and how that's going to pan out. Of course, none of us want to lose any employees. We don't want to lay people off. Like Thomas was saying, we don't want to cancel contracts. You know, and I agree. You know, we're doing our best, you know, to keep some of these contracts going. So it's a it's definitely a lot of unknowns, and you know, we want to make sure that we take care of our artists, make sure that they're okay as much as we can. And with the unknowns, as we're quickly trying to pivot and find new ways of providing a service, you know, me too, I am concerned too of how fast we change gears and whether that's thought out and how costly that's going to be, and whether we think online is the only solution. Because I think right now we're all running towards online. Um, Rightly so. Thank goodness that we have this tool available to us, that we have the internet and all this technology. But we got to think there's a lot more that we got to think about as we redesign our programs.
Great, thank you for sharing that, Christina. I'm going to attempt to switch my screen here back to camera on me. So we have all four of us here. And Thomas, your video is working fine now. Thank you for switching that up. So you all brought up a lot of great issues to kind of touch on. I think I wanted to start with the thing that's usually at the core of the work we do, and that's supporting artists or tradition bearers or, you know, communities and community members that sustain traditions and bring these art forms that we present, if we're arts presenters, or artists, that if we're artists, the things we perform, or folklorists, those things we document and share with others and educate others about. How do we work with artists and community members and tradition bearers to support them right now? It's like Christina mentioned, there's so many unknowns, but what are some things that each of you are doing to either support yourselves if you're an artist or support the artists you work with? It's a broad question. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, what I'm seeing a lot of other musicians and artists doing is using social media platforms like Instagram or Facebook Live, and they're streaming live concerts and they're asking for donations and tips and things like that. But what I've been doing to try to support other artists right now and my other friends is you know, buying their album right now or supporting them, you know, on Bandcamp. Like, for example, Bandcamp did a really interesting thing, which is they said for one day, if you buy an artist's album, all 100% of those proceeds go to the artist. So Bandcamp didn't take a cut. And I thought that was a really cool way to help artists right now. But other than that, I mean, it's hard. I mean, there's just, I don't know, it's hard to be creative to think of, you know, other streams of income. So yeah.
Can I add something to that? I I agree with all of that you said, that what people are doing. One of my favorite things about this moment is that I feel like in my circle that I've seen, people are more generous, more ready to buy that record, you know, buy that t-shirt, and they didn't even think about it. They're like, that's my friend, they have a record. One of the most innovative things I have seen along that line is a friend of mine in just outside Cincinnati, Ohio, is doing this Instagram. She's a singer-songwriter. She's doing this customized Instagram song. So you tip her, right? You send money. She doesn't specify an amount. She says, throw me some money. Here's my Venmo. Here's my PayPal. I'm going to write you a song based on your, like, I think it's like your last Instagram post or one that she just picks. And it's blowing up. Like, it was written up in the Cincinnati paper. Like, I couldn't wait. I couldn't send her money fast enough. Get a custom song about the last, like, Instagram post I made. And it was great. And it's becoming really big for her. And I think she is a musician. And when she's not touring, she works in, like, a coffee shop. She's like a barista. Like, her income is zilch right now. She's just went dead stop. And so I think that this really has been maintaining her when she's got probably at least $100 a day coming in just to keep her afloat.
Yeah, I've been doing something very similar, not quite as creative. I haven't told people I'll write you an original song, but I told people send a request, anything, I'll learn it, and whatever you want to give, you can if you feel compelled to. So that's been blowing up. I can't keep up with it, but I'm trying. But that's really cool. That's awesome that she's doing that.
That's great.
Yeah.
On the end of the arts administration, those of us that run programs and we have budgets, to run them, there's, for example, we have a big conjunto festival in May that, of course, we had to cancel. We are, if possible, we are trying to postpone the festival and hold it later in the fiscal year. So we're going to try to have that in September. That festival happens to be well funded. So what if we do end up moving it to September? I'm trying to pay deposits as soon as we confirm it. For that date, I will send deposits to artists ASAP. So that at least they have something, because this was a funding stream that they were counting on or in May. We're doing that. Another piece is. We were talking about this, but we don't even know where to begin, for possibly some advocacy for, I know artists can't apply for unemployment benefits, but we were talking about, writing some kind of letter, or demonstrate, especially with some of our regularly performing artists. Basically, they've been furloughed. We have a show that we do once a month. It's a ballet folklorico mariachi show. And, and basically we do have contracts, with these artists for the year or for the period of 6 months. And it would be good if they could apply for unemployment benefits, now that these programs have paused. Some of our teaching artists as well, some of those, all we have a big traditional dance and music academy with ballet folklorico and mariachi and conjunto programs. Of course, we're moving all of those online. We're moving all those classes online. So the teachers will continue teaching those classes and get the income from those classes. But some of the other programs, like some of the school programs, some of the insurance programs for seniors, all the live in classroom programs, those have all paused. So we're also trying to see, hey, it would be good if those artists could get some unemployment benefits, because they have lost, some of their regularly going gigs. And so we're trying to do some advocacy around that, with our legislators. And I mean, that's a much longer term process. We don't think, that's not going to have immediate results. But those are the things that we were thinking about, that we've been talking about to try to support the artists.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing.
Can I add one thing, Charlie?
Please.
So I'm not an artist. That's not how I, think of myself. I'm a documentarian. And one of the things along all of these things that people are talking about that I really worry about are the kind of, like I said earlier, the exploitative factors. And I think that one of the silver linings, because everything has to kind of be thought of as a silver lining, is all of these things going online and so many people not being aware of what can be kept, repurposed, for later. We talk about streaming all the time, and streaming is great, but like if you're not streaming and recording, it goes out and it's like a live performance. And just to get people aware of what they are like the difference between creating digital content and just being on a digital platform may potentially have different ramifications for people. So I've been talking to a lot of people about making aware what you are recording, how you are using it, who might be able to benefit from it later. Because I think a lot of times these artists, that Instagram example, she's not recording them. She's just sending them out live. And I was shocked to hear that.
Yeah.
And I was like, you that's one and done. And that's her choice, right? So it's like, that's fine. Autonomy is huge. But I'm lately in the last 2 weeks, I've been a big advocate for making sure everyone thinks through the long-term possibilities with all of this surge of digital content.
Right. And I think that's something that artists and art administrators and folklorists and documentarians all need to be aware of, and maybe as a kind of fundamental shift in how we present work or present arts. If we're wanting to have this kind of lasting impact or bigger reach. So I'm curious, Thomas.
But there's also the opposite fear, which I would also ask people to consider. I mean, we all probably all know someone who's teaching online right now, and there's a big push to not be too good at teaching online, because then your administrators are going to say, why do we need you in the classroom anyway? I think that there is a analogy for artists to maybe not have the, Facebook watch party be too good, because I want to go to a concert. I want to go to a dance. I don't want that desire to be quashed by such great digital content. Anyway, just putting that out there.
Absolutely. This idea of keeping it original, not giving away too much, because they can be recorded and collected, and then the person becomes expendable, and their record just becomes the substance there. So that's interesting to think about. Right. I think one thing I've been grappling with on our end is, our main service to artists has been mostly doing programming and paying artists, compensating artists to be part of those programs. And now that either, those can't happen, or they're having to happen in different ways that artists might not be able to participate in, I'm trying to really look at what is the value of arts organizations now. Christina, you brought up some interesting ideas of really doing more service and advocacy work, helping people to file for unemployment, making sure they're aware of their avenues to get support, because they might not be able to access that without some assistance or just explanation of what's happening. So I'm seeing kind of our role shift to more of a service kind of providing organization, but it's a big shift. It's something maybe we're not quite built for, so we have to learn some new techniques. And I think Thomas, what you said earlier about trying to do work that is not exploitative and actually assist people is key. So we're really just grappling with those challenges. We haven't figured it out. There are a couple of things that we've tried to do, just even as we get these kind of digital platforms off the ground. We have a number of sponsored projects through the City of Austin Cultural Arts Division that, they were going to do live programs. Now they have to shift them online and find some other way to do them. So we're trying to at least see if we can allow those people to access our streaming platforms, so that they have, our organization's audience. They can use some of the tools that we're paying for as an organization, like Zoom conferencing, for example. Just small tools like this to make sure we can give people access to the things they need to be relevant now. Because if you don't have internet access and you don't have that ability to broadcast, it's hard to do a presentation right now. And there's restrictions at many levels for that. So those are just things that I'm kind of dealing with right now that are difficult.
I think it's a time of, a lot of people kind of reconciling what it is they do. In this moment, I find myself advocating more and more for doing what you feel you're good at, and not trying to step into the role you necessarily think needs to be filled. Because I've seen some of that. It seems like there's a lot of, I should be doing this, even though I have no idea how to do that. There's a lot of wasted time there. But I think that the service role is just the default place of like, what do you need? You know, asking people what they need, what they want, how can we help is the fundamental tone that I think all cultural organizations need to be setting, and not coming at it from a top down, this is what we're going to do, rather than like, what do you need? And then trying to match that need to whatever platform. And I think you're right to not, you know, to bring people into Zoom, say like, great, you know, you're a mariachi band, but what you need right now is Zoom access, you know, we can do that, right? Just being flexible.
Well, some of the things that that are really going through my mind is, you know, that whole thing is, right now it seems like the answer to everything right now is online, digital, you know, content, right? Well, you know, I think a lot about the digital divide, you know, the people that don't have access to decent broadband, you know, internet, you know, and there are some areas, I know the neighborhood that I work in is actually one of the worst service, you know, in terms of digital services, internet services. There's a serious digital divide in our neighborhood. Um, and then also, especially in the folk and traditional arts, we work a lot with a lot of seniors, and you know, some of them are tech savvy, many are not. So that, you know, the digital is not going to be the answer to everything. So that's one of the things that's on my mind. You know, how do we just not over rely on, you know, digital answers and online platforms? And another thing too, that to something that you said, Thomas, about not trying to do what we can't do. I think there is a temptation now to create all kinds of online programming. And I've had to say, whoa, wait, let's stop just a second. You know, it's taken us 2 weeks to figure out just how to put our videos, our folklorico and mariachi and conjunto instruction videos online, you know, how to get them to the right people, to our families that we serve. You know, we don't have a lot of tech savvy people on our team. You know, and now that all the people in their 20s on our team are being overstretched because now they have to be the tech people for the entire organization. You know, those of us that are older, some of us, you know, even me, I'm like way behind on tech now, I feel. So I've and as artists, the creative community, well, we're creative, right? And we can come up with new ideas fast. But we got to be careful with those ideas, you know, and make sure that we can implement them. And you know, and now we're starting to get pitches, you know, for new programs and this and that, and we gotta carefully sift through those, you know, and make sure that we can handle them, make sure that it is within our mission, you know. So I think now I feel what I'm having to do is resist the temptation to do everything online, and just because everybody else is being innovative, you know, and we kind of feel like, oh, we're going to fall behind if we don't do this. And you know, well, our funder's going to come and say, well, what online programming did you do? I'm telling my staff, let's stick to our programs that we already had. You know, look, we're not going to create any new programs, you know, just to be able to do something digital. You know, let's stick to what we have, what we can do digitally, what makes sense, and not create anything new. You know, so if we have classes, all right, that makes sense. How can we put those, you know, online? You know, anything else that's new, it's like, no, that still needs to wait. You know, we need to get past this crisis. So, and I also think, okay, this will pass at some point. We don't know when. It might be a lot longer than we hope, but it will pass. You know, we know from history there have been other pandemics before, like the main one that we're all looking at is that flu of 1918, right? And it did pass at some point, and life went on. more folk and traditional arts was being produced in communities. More people came back together and continued to produce culture together and continue to produce art. So, we gotta just think about that this moment will pass at some point, and we will learn how to live with this, because it's going to be a new reality. Just like 9/11 made us live with a new reality, just like the whole unfortunate, all the shootings, in public spaces started to make us live in a new reality. This is also going to start teaching us and training us to live in a new reality, and it will pass. So we won't have this pressure of having to do online programming almost exclusively. Like right now, it seems like that's all we can do, online programming. But this won't last forever.
Ariana, do you have anything to add to that conversation? Because I think you're in a position where you're kind of being forced to be creative and push online content as soon as possible.
Yeah, like for me, it's kind of the opposite. I feel like I have to do that right now. It's not something I normally do a whole lot of. Normally I just would have, videos of my playing on my website, for students and parents or booking people. But now I'm really having to like market myself, and yeah, so I just don't know an alternative at this point for me.
One of the things I've seen that I can't speak to because I am not in a position to make this decision, but I've thought it's a really great idea, at least in theory, was kind of breaking apart how your finances work as an organization. So if we take Texas Folklife as the example, and you had $10,000 for the next, 6 months to do this and this and this, and that's all canceled. To break that apart and start thinking of yourself as a microloan organization, where rather than booking certain bands for, or whatever, you had a line item that was $800 for like a band. You'd be like, all right, well, we're going to give this band $150, and we're going to just reach out to other people and just downsize and spread it out. So it's like the most, equally distributed, but also it also allows for like, what are you going to do with it, right? It allows for a lot of different things to potentially come up. I would also advocate that the organization in this instance not be too heavy-handed about what you're asking for that $150. Be like, hey, send us a performance, send us a clip, put it on our YouTube, whatever, because people are already overstretched, right? And they don't need to be working too hard for $150.
Yeah.
But it was an interesting creative administrative thought, I thought.
We can save it for a later performance.
Right.
I'm doing a little bit of that, where it's okay. And yes, it's a little bit, somewhat of a risk, but we say, okay, I'm going to pay you for this performance now. I might ask you to do this performance, later, 6 months from now, maybe a year from now. Yeah, but we can work with our artists, pay upfront now what we can. And of course, that's if, the funders allow it too,
right.
Because we have, obligations to our funders who expect us to use those dollars in certain ways.
Right.
I would argue that every funder I have seen right now is very amenable to changes of plans.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the good news, is that, everyone supporting us has been very flexible in terms of what we can use those dollars for. So thankfully, that provides a little leeway for that creativity. So does anyone else have any other topics they wanted to raise here? The time just flies by here when we're talking about this important stuff. But I wanted to see if Ariana could play a song or two for us. So before I do that, does anybody else have anything?
I have one thing that has been coming up for me a lot, and this is what I kind of suggested initially. One of the things that I'm really worried about um, is the rush to document the moment and how people are feeling and responding to the moment. And I think that there are good ways to do that, and I think that that is important. I think we can just in the folkloric world can look to Vermont Folklife Center, which I think has been rolling out some pretty interesting things for families to self-document, people who are already quarantined together to kind of make the most of it in a way with a very light touch. I'm very nervous about other organizations I've seen who are really trying to get your trauma story right now. And I was on another call the other day, and I said it's kind of like asking Katrina victims to sit down for an interview while they're on their way to the Superdome. It's like we're still in it, you know. I think it's very dangerous to be asking too much of people on how they're feeling, how they're responding. I think that the folk and traditional arts are a, you know, and I think everyone's in agreement, right? They're a life force. They are a healing. They are a good thing that makes us feel grounded, that makes us feel whole, makes us feel ourselves. So I advocate that's like, just get people to do that. Don't make them talk about the bad stuff. Like, make them do that. If it's a grandmother teaching their granddaughter how to make tamales at home because they've never sat down and done that, like, make that be the source of what you're documenting, not how you feel about being terrified that grandma's going to die. You know, make the tamales the thing. So I just, you know, I need to slip that in because I've seen some what I consider to be a little rash movement toward the documenting of the fear that people are feeling.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's really important to remember right now. Were there other thoughts people wanted to leave us with?
I guess I have a question about that. So, like, to what extent is it important, though, to document people's fear? Like, are you saying it should only be done after the fact?
Not necessarily. I think it's a little safer after the fact. I think that this is just one of these times. Folklorists are rarely, if ever, therapists or psychologists, right? And the kind of, you know, sensitivity and nuance to asking people about such traumatic things, I think I don't feel comfortable about that. You know, I have no training in that. I may be really messing it up for someone. I don't, you know, I can ask someone about playing the accordion. You know, I know the world of the accordion. I get that. So I don't think it's like off limits completely. But I think in this moment of, particularly when, for me, when I'm not there and I'm like trying to facilitate families doing it internally, like I'll be on a Skype call with someone in Austin. I'll be like, hey, who are you hooked up with? What do they do? You know, just not necessarily prioritizing. Because honestly, I think that, I don't know how y'all are with the conversations you're having with your family. It's going to come up anyway, right? It's not, I mean, everyone is thinking about the exact same thing right now across the world. It's a trippy time where everyone is, you know, thinking about the same thing. So I feel like it's gonna I almost said infect the conversation. It's going to come up in the course of a conversation about anything.
I agree. If anything, it's dominating the conversation. Yeah. Disproportionately. So I agree that we should be highlighting some of these other facets of kind of what's come up during this time. Yeah.
And speaking of highlighting the good stuff, Ariana, can I ask
Yes.
Would you mind playing a tune for us?
Yeah.
Tell us anything that you want to about the process of doing the apprenticeship program, and what did that mean to you? What stuck with you? Anything you want to say about it?
Yeah. Let me grab my instrument.
She has this lovely wooded background over here as well.
That's like the new thing, right? Is like checking your background for
Right.
your Zoom conference.
Removing the embarrassing items and putting instruments there. I see you've got an instrument there, or a map, like I have, something, books to show that you read them.
Okay, yeah. So the apprenticeship program, wow, it was very cool. It was challenging. It was really hard. I mean, literal sweat and tears went into it. Yeah, so I basically would study with Shirley 3 hours a week of private lessons. So I would meet with her an hour and a half, you know, twice a week. And yeah, so it was very intense. But it was really awesome. I'm really thankful for it. Yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna play a tango. Keeping it short for
Bravo.
you. Thank you. That was La Paloma Tango by Sebastian Radier. Kind of put a little Texas swing on it or
Right.
something. I don't know, a little twist on it.
Thank you so much for playing for us here.
Yeah, of course, of course.
I'm
Another,
going.
or are we done?
No, if you want to play one more, please go ahead.
Okay. Do something a little more soothing. When we dance together, my world in disguise, fairy tale dream, it's come true. And with your hand in mine, dear, I could dance on and on. I could waltz across Texas with you. Waltz across Texas with you. Waltz across Texas, like a story of lost and torn. I could walk across Texas with you.
Bravo. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you for listening and thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
You should, Ariana, you should bill yourself as, this should be a new gig, inserting a accordion cap to everyone's Zoom conference. It's like the new standard.
Yeah.
For only $10, I'll come into your Zoom conference and cap it off with a little accordion music. People won't feel so, overwhelmed by their video conference lifestyle now.
I like that. Good idea.
Good idea. I want to thank all of you for joining us. Ariana Bina, Christina Bai, Thomas Richardson. Thank you all for making this happen. It was great to talk and stay connected with you all during this time. So thank you for being here.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Charlie, for being
Thank you,
here.
Charlie. It's great to meet everyone.
It's great to meet everybody. Good luck to everybody. We're still going through this. We'll see how we come out of this. Good luck to everybody, and thank you, Charlie, for being a leader and getting us all together. I think this is a great idea.
It was my pleasure, and I'm just going to have one more note here. If you're listening and watching this, and you have any thoughts or ideas about what we discussed here, please share them with us. Share them with us on Facebook. You can message Texas Folklife there, or you can email us at info@texasfolklife.org. And we hope to continue these discussions. I really appreciate our panelists today. So for Texas Folklife, this is Executive Director Charlie Lockwood saying thank you and goodbye. We will talk to you soon. Stay safe and healthy, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Take care.